Colombia, a country known for its rich culture and resilient people, is facing a challenging period. There's significant political unrest and economic uncertainty. At the center of this is President Gustavo Petro, a former M19 guerrilla member. His plans to implement changes have sparked debates and even protests. When Petro was elected in 2022, it was a significant event. He's Colombia's first left-wing president. His victory brought hope to many, especially those who have been struggling. But, after 2 years of ideological and non-technical policy decisions, people are concerned about his ideas and the future of Colombia. The biggest issue is Petro's plan to reform labor laws. He aims to provide workers with more rights and ensure fair employment for all. Some support this idea, saying it's long overdue. Others fear it could harm the economy, potentially leading to the loss of over 500,000 jobs, according to a study by the Central Bank of Colombia, and causing thousands of businesses to close. Colombians are left wondering, will Petro's reforms improve the situation, or will they create more challenges? President Petro's labor reform plan is ambitious, aiming to reshape how Colombia works, but it lacks technical support and a solid financial base. Petro claims this will benefit low-wage workers and reduce the gap between rich and poor. He also proposes stricter regulations on hiring temporary workers and outsourcing. This is to prevent companies from using these methods to bypass labor laws. The plan also aims to extend Social Security benefits to informal workers. Many of these workers currently lack access to healthcare and retirement plans. Petro believes this will lift people out of poverty and create a more equal society. Labor unions and worker rights groups support these initiatives. However, business leaders, the elected Congress, and the Colombian Central Bank argue that these changes could harm the economy, deter investments, and lead to job losses. Petro's labor reform plan is facing significant opposition in Colombia's Congress. The proposal, which aims to overhaul the labor market, has ignited intense debate among lawmakers and the public. The reform includes measures to increase the minimum wage, enhance workers' rights, and impose stricter regulations on hiring practices. While some see these changes as necessary, others view them with suspicion and concern, due to the lack of consensus with other political parties. This highlights the political divide in the country. The streets of Colombia are filled with posters and banners representing a wide array of political views. Protests and rallies have become a common sight, with citizens voicing their rejection of the proposed reforms. The political landscape mirrors the broader societal divisions, with different regions and communities holding starkly contrasting opinions on the country's future direction. The Seventh Commission, responsible for labor laws, has become a battleground. Members of the commission voted to archive the proposal, arguing that the changes would have detrimental effects on the economy. The heated discussions often spill over into the public domain, further fueling the national debate. Critics, mainly from outside Petro's party, worry about the impact on Colombia's already struggling economy. They argue that the proposed reforms could lead to increased costs for businesses, particularly small and medium-sized enterprises that are already facing financial difficulties. The fear is that these additional burdens could push some businesses to the brink of closure, exacerbating the economic challenges the country is facing. They believe raising the minimum wage will hurt businesses, especially small ones, and lead to over 500,000 job losses, according to the central bank and several former ministers of commerce and finance. Small business owners are particularly vocal in their opposition, arguing that the increased labor costs could force them to reduce their workforce or even shut down operations. This, in turn, could lead to higher unemployment rates and further economic instability. They also believe stricter hiring regulations will deter companies from investing and creating new jobs. The concern is that the proposed regulations could make it more difficult and costly for businesses to hire new employees, leading to a slowdown in job creation. This could have a ripple effect on the economy, as reduced investment and job growth could stifle economic development and innovation. They argue these changes will make it difficult for businesses to adapt to the changing economy and stifle innovation and growth. Entrepreneurs and startup founders are particularly worried about the potential impact on their ability to innovate and expand. They argue that the proposed reforms could create an environment that is less conducive to entrepreneurship, making it harder for new businesses to get off the ground and succeed. The arguments in Congress reflect the diverse perspectives of Colombians. The debates are not just about economic policies, but also about the broader vision for the country's future. Supporters of the reform see it as a necessary step towards a more equitable society, while opponents fear it could lead to economic decline and increased government intervention in the market. Some view it as a move towards fairness, while others see it as a dangerous step towards socialism that will harm the economy. The proposed reforms have become a symbol of the broader ideological battle between those who advocate for greater social justice and those who prioritize economic growth and stability. This ideological divide is evident in the passionate arguments and protests that have erupted across the country. The Seventh Commission's rejection of the plan is a significant setback for Petro, signaling more political battles ahead. The rejection of the reform proposal by the Seventh Commission is a major blow for President Petro and his administration. It underscores the challenges they face in advancing their agenda in a deeply divided political landscape. The battle over labor reform is far from over, and the coming months will likely see further intense debates and political maneuvering as both sides continue to fight for their vision of Colombia's future. Section 4. Petro's Rebuttal, a Call to Action. In the heart of Colombia, a nation stands at a crossroads. The recent political turmoil has brought to light deep-seated issues that have long been simmering beneath the surface. President Gustavo Petro, with his lowest approval ratings ever, has become the epicenter of this storm. Congress rejecting Petro's labor plan has caused a huge uproar with the president. The plan, which aimed to overhaul labor laws, has caused controversy. President Petro says his opponents are stopping progress and not caring about workers. He argues that the current system favors the elite and leaves the majority struggling to make ends meet. In his speeches, he passionately calls for a more equitable society where every Colombian has a fair chance at success. In many speeches, Petro has asked his supporters to protest and demand action from their leaders. He believes that the power of the people can bring about the change that the country so desperately needs. His call to action has resonated with some, including indigenous tribes and teachers, neither group affected by the labor reform. They see him as a champion for the underprivileged, someone who understands their struggles and is willing to fight for their rights. This support is particularly strong in poorer neighborhoods, where the impact of economic disparity is most acutely felt. Big protests have happened in cities across the country. From Bogotá to Medellín, the streets have been filled with chants, banners, and a palpable sense of urgency. These protests are not just against the labor plan, they are a manifestation against Petro. But Petro's strong words have also made the political divide in Colombia even bigger. His rhetoric, while inspiring to some, has alienated others who view his approach as too radical. This has led to heightened tensions and in some cases violent clashes between opposing groups. People against him say he is causing unrest, hurting democracy, and pushing extreme ideas that will hurt the economy. They argue that his policies could lead to economic instability, and that his confrontational style is undermining democratic institutions. Colombia is now very divided, and neither side seems willing to give in. The polarization is stark, with both supporters and detractors digging in their heels. This division is not just political, it is also social and economic, reflecting deeper fractures within Colombian society. What happens next between Petro and his opponents will be very important for the country's future. The outcome of this conflict will shape Colombia's political landscape for years to come. It will determine whether the country moves towards greater inclusivity and social justice, or remains mired in inequality and division. It will change the political landscape and decide how the economy and society develop. The stakes are high, and the path forward is uncertain. As Colombia navigates this turbulent period, the actions of its leaders and the will of its people will be crucial in shaping its destiny. Section 5. Referendum Roulette, a risky bet for Colombia's future. President Petro has made a bold and controversial move. In a country where political maneuvers are often met with skepticism, his decision to bypass the traditional legislative process has raised many eyebrows. This isn't just a political strategy, it's a gamble that could redefine his presidency and Colombia's future. He wants to skip Congress elected to represent the people, and let the people already represented by the Congress they elected decide about his labor reform plan through a national vote. This approach, while democratic in nature, is fraught with risks and uncertainties. The labor reform plan itself is a complex and multifaceted proposal that aims to address long-standing issues in the Colombian workforce. But by passing Congress and appealing to what he calls the people, is a familiar behavior used by Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela before and the Castros in Cuba. This style makes Colombians very concerned. This is a big risk, but it shows how much Petro wants to make these changes and that he believes the people support him. He sees this as an opportunity to connect directly with the citizens, bypassing what he perceives as a disconnected and out-of-touch Congress. Petro says this vote is needed because Congress doesn't understand what Colombians need. He argues that the legislative body is bogged down by partisan politics and special interests, which hinder meaningful progress. By taking the issue directly to the people, he hopes to cut through the political noise and achieve a mandate for change. He thinks this will give regular people a chance to shape the country's future. For many Colombians, this referendum represents a rare opportunity to have a direct say in the nation's policy-making process. It empowers them to voice their opinions on critical issues that affect their daily lives, from employment conditions to economic stability. But people have different opinions about this vote. The country is divided with passionate arguments on both sides. Some view the referendum as a necessary step towards true democracy, while others see it as a populist tactic that undermines the established political system. The minority supporters argue that the current system is too slow and unresponsive to the urgent needs of the population. By putting the decision in the hands of the people, they hope to expedite the implementation of much-needed reforms. Others think it's a dangerous move by Petro. Critics warn that bypassing Congress sets a dangerous precedent. They argue that it undermines the checks and balances that are essential for a healthy democracy. By concentrating power in the hands of the executive, they fear it could lead to authoritarianism. They say it takes power away from Congress and sets a bad example. The legislative body, they argue, is there for a reason, to represent the diverse interests of the population and to provide a forum for debate and compromise. By sidelining Congress, Petro risks alienating a significant portion of the political establishment. They also worry that the vote won't be fair, and that Petro's government might try to control the results. Allegations of potential manipulation and lack of transparency have further fueled the controversy. Opponents fear that the government could use its influence to sway the outcome in its favor, undermining the integrity of the democratic process. Colombia's election officials will decide if this vote will happen. The responsibility now lies with the country's electoral authorities, who must assess the legality and feasibility of the proposed referendum. Their decision will be closely watched and could have far-reaching implications for Colombia's political landscape. Their decision will be very important for the country's politics and could change the balance of power between the president and Congress. The outcome of this high-stakes gamble will not only determine the fate of the labor reform, but also set the tone for future interactions between the executive and legislative branches. As Colombia stands at this crossroads, the world watches with bated breath, waiting to see how this bold experiment in direct democracy will unfold.